I'm Quentin Angus, and this is Good Company. Each episode, I speak with a world-leading artist about their craft and the stories that make them who they are. And today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Cecil Alexander, an absolute beast on the instrument, well-respected by his peers. Cecil, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Quentin.
I always like to start with something recent. I saw you recently came to New York City. You played at Jazz at Lincoln Center and with another Australian New York-based artist, Angus Mason, on the drums. Can you just talk a little bit about that? What was that event?
Sure. So that was Jazz at Lincoln Center does these like pre-concert shows in this room called the Atrium. So it's usually before like a bigger artist performs. So we were kind of opening for Steve Miller. And he was doing a concert with some, like, Jazz at Lincoln Center affiliated artists. And he was doing the music of, like, Eddie Harris and Matt Adderley, like, kind of soul jazz alongside some of his older originals, like, from the 70s and stuff like that. So we did that for 2 nights. And, yeah, Angus was on drums. That was actually my first time playing with him. I was recommended him through another drummer friend. He was great, and then there was another friend of mine that I did my master's with, a fantastic organist and pianist named Will Gorman. So we just did an organ trio set both nights. It was really fun.
Amazing. Yeah, so Angus is actually from the same part of Australia that I'm from. We both went to the University of Adelaide in South Australia. He was a little bit younger than me, like a few years behind. Have you heard of Nick Pennington, guitar player?
Yeah, great guitar player,
Yeah. So they went through together, I think maybe 3 years after I did or something. But small world.
It is
awesome.
Yeah.
So let's go way back to early Cecil. When did you start playing guitar? Did you play other instruments first, or when did you first pick up the instrument?
So I started playing drums first when I was around 4 or 5 years old. I got a kind of a toy drum set for Christmas one year, and I kind of dabbled with that for a couple of years, and I begged my parents for either a saxophone or a guitar, and I was drawn to both because of the scene in Back to the Future where Marty McFly plays Johnny B. Good.
Oh yeah,
and it's just ripping. I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I had seen saxophones and TV shows and other movies and stuff like that. So they got me a guitar for Christmas one year, and I was really excited about it at first. But at the time, I didn't really, YouTube wasn't really a thing, so I couldn't just go on there and look up Jimi Hendrix, Woodstock, 1969. So I didn't really feel like I had much to kind of keep me inspired and keep me going. So I actually I took lessons for maybe 2 years and then gave it up, played sports for a couple of years, and then after seeing a video on VH1 of Eddie Van Halen playing, I got inspired to pick it up again. And at that point, I could see all these concert videos on YouTube, and Daily Motion and all that stuff was the thing. So I just kind of went deep down the rabbit hole and started kind of teaching myself for a while, learning tabs for different popular songs and things like that. And then I got linked with this really great teacher who was he was a student at the local community college studying jazz guitar, and a lot of the stuff that he was doing with me, I wasn't quite ready for it, but it just kind of gave me a taste of this is Wes Montgomery, and this is be-bop, and this is Charlie Parker, and all that kind of stuff, even though I didn't really dig deep into that stuff until much, much later. I'd say when I was a teenager, I was mostly playing blues and blues rock and stuff like that.
Very cool. So I wonder what your first, so I'll share a small story about me, similar-ish. My first guitar teacher that really pushed me in the jazz direction and, theoretically and technically and everything, he was trying to get me into jazz, and he kept giving me recordings, and he gave me first a recording of Pat Metheny. And honestly, I thought it sounded like crap when he was playing super fast. Like especially the 16th note, 8th note lines. I just didn't understand it. And then he gave me John Scofield, and similar thing. I dug Scofield's songs more, but like the improvising, I just didn't get it. Like my ears weren't developed. And then he gave me Wes Montgomery, The Incredible Jazz Guitar. And I'll never forget like that entire album, the songs, the improvising, like the way he phrases, it was just, that was my doorway in. So I wonder what was your first, like entry into jazz?
Sure. So both of my parents were really big jazz fans. My dad wasn't a musician, but he would play records of Wes and George Benson and even like John Coltrane stuff around the house when I was growing up, along with like smooth jazz and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
Which was way more my bag when I was a kid. Like I was like, this is a vibe.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But when it came to getting into jazz on my own, as a younger kid, I kind of just thought that was like my parents' music, like the more straight ahead stuff. And then it wasn't until I went to this summer program at Berklee College of Music where, I was still like more in this blues zone, like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Albert King, Hendrix, was my biggest inspiration, still is. But I had a really great teacher there named Kurt Shoemate, who was kind of probably the best entry point I could have had into like straight ahead jazz guitar at that point, because he saw where I was at and he was like, oh, you like these guys? You would love Grant Green and Kenny Burrell and Wes Montgomery. And I knew some of the names and, was kind of familiar with like maybe, like I had heard 4 on 6 before. I had never heard any Grant Green stuff. I had maybe heard Chitlin's Con Carne before. By Kenny Burrell, but he was playing these recordings for me in the room and just like getting his notes like while we were listening and like different things that he was hearing. He would say like, oh man, I love that lick, or like, oh, I love what the drummer does like when he's comping here. Just things that I had never really thought about before.
As you were listening to the recording,
we were listening to it in the room together, and then he put on. And I was getting into it, but then he put on Grant Green, and the recording was "It Ain't Necessarily So," which is from those like quartet sessions with Art Blakey and I think Sam Jones and Sonny Clark, and that just blew my mind. Like I was like, man, this is unreal. Like the phrasing, the time feel, the sound, and there was so much of the vocabulary that I could identify because it was so bluesy. There were even some moments where he was playing these like repeated phrases that sounded like something Angus Young might do or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was really into that, and then I went back home after that summer program and was checking out all these jazz recordings, and I was like, I'm gonna be a jazz guitarist. This is what I'm gonna do. But where I'm from is such a small scene, and there really aren't that many people that are interested in that music. So I didn't really have many opportunities to like play standards with people or take lessons with somebody who was gonna I needed somebody to kind of hold my hand in the way that he did, at that point anyways. So I appreciated the jazz stuff a lot more and understood a little bit more of it, but also just the resources weren't out there. Like I couldn't go on YouTube and learn from so-and-so. So I was kind of still more into like the blues and rock and kind of added fusion into the bag because, limited changes, like, playing over vamps and stuff like that. I could kind of appreciate that a little bit more. So then I went to college, did my undergrad at Berklee College of Music, and pretty much like mainly stayed in that sort of scene the first like 2.5 years of school. Like I was just playing like R&B gigs and funk and fusion stuff primarily.
Oh, wow. So, because when you were at Berklee, your major was composition, right? And it sounds like the playing you were doing was not mainly jazz, right? You were doing other stuff.
Yeah, I started as a performance major, and then like a year and a half in, I switched to jazz composition for a lot of different reasons. I wanted to like dig more into the theoretical side of things, but I kind of just also wanted to crack open some, scores of like Thad Jones stuff and Bob Brookmeyer stuff and kind of understand that world a little bit more, you know.
And what was William Patterson like? Was that like different vibe to Berkeley? I mean, it's a smaller school, right? State school.
Mhm. Yeah, really small program. So before William Patterson, you know, like in the last like year and a half or so of Berkeley, I had some really like formative experiences getting to play like some jam sessions with some, you know, jazz musicians who I admired, and just kind of like getting my butt kicked, like, sort of let me know what sorts of things I should be focusing on. Because I wasn't really into like the jazz playing thing. Like I knew some tunes, but you know, when it came to like getting vocabulary together on the neck and like transcribing and doing deep listening and all that kind of stuff, I had like just scratched the surface, you know. So I had those experiences, and that kind of let me know more what I should be focusing on, like, you know, time feel and accompaniment, and you know, what sorts of vocabulary you can play that can kind of like shape the rhythm section sound and things like that. I had never really thought about. So I dug really deep into straight ahead playing in those 2 years, and then I started William Patterson and just like kind of went deeper down the rabbit hole. Like that was a really great program because we were so close to the source in a lot of ways. Like one of my teachers was Harold Mayburn, who, you know, played with John Coltrane, Wes Montgomery, Miles Davis. Bill Charlap is the director of the program there.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Goodwin, you know, who's played with Phil Woods and Keith Jarrett and people like that. So, you know, you're getting these like one-on-one experiences with these people who have like, you know, really been doing the thing, which was really refreshing.
Yeah.
So I, yeah, just kind of like was super playing centric those 2 years during that program, and I didn't really have like we didn't have like improv classes or theory classes as master's students.
Oh wow!
Like, it was pretty much just like we had an ear training class. We had sort of like a jazz styles class, like where we were transcribing famous solos, and then we would have to like write a solo that was kind of like modeled on that soloist, that kind of thing. But the rest of it was just like research focused. Like we did, you know, research studies class, and you know, getting ready for writing like analytical papers and things like that. So I was spending so much of my time just like playing with other students and just like getting to develop my thing, which was super, super useful, I think.
Very cool. I went to SUNY Purchase, and we had a similar class with John Faddis, where he would get everyone to, he went kind of by era, and he would get everyone to transcribe each era and learn the history. And then literally you would go up the front and he would just grill you about it. Like he would play the transcription and he would be like, oh, play it in another key. Or like, can you talk through the theory about it? Or like you would have to talk about the era and the players that were around at the time. And he would basically just grill you until you couldn't speak anymore. And it was honestly, such a great experience, because his whole thing, I remember him saying this, he was like, yeah, you were all here studying to be like a master of jazz. Like we need to get you as close as possible. Like
That's
you're
cool.
going to graduate. Yeah, it was great. So I think I might fast forward a little bit, just given where the conversation is going, because you talked a lot about different styles of music that have influenced your playing. And then, you know, obviously the jazz stuff. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, so you've done a lot of, I would say like more experimental releases, some that have only been released on Bandcamp. And then also with Mark Zaleski, I've noticed that other stuff coming out and you're playing way more than other projects, right? Where it's more like straight ahead jazz. So can you maybe talk about that / demo some of the different ways that you think, you know, like in more traditional jazz versus like something that has some soul or funk or fusion or like more experimental stuff?
Sure. I think for me it's really tied to listening. But also there's kind of like different perspectives that I'll have in mind, like when I'm trying to tackle different genres. Like I feel like for me, in order to express myself fully, like in a straight ahead context, I really have to be hearing what I'm playing, you know? So a good example would be like if I take All the Things You Are or something like that. Even just the first couple of changes, I can't really. I feel like I can't like operate properly in the idiom and be thinking like, I have to use this scale here, I have to use this scale here, or even like I have to use this lick here, this lick here, this lick here. I have to be thinking more melodically. So like, it has to be like connected to my ear, because for me, the way that I felt like I made progress in straight ahead playing was by doing a ton of deep listening, and just like really trying to get the sound of it in my ears to the point where, when there isn't a recording playing, I can hear a recording playing in my head,
Yeah.
And for me, it was a lot of like just digging into the stuff that I love a lot. Like, I spent a while, especially while I was studying jazz in school, doing certain projects or like listening to certain music, like just because a professor told me that it was something that I should check out. And then for me, it was a matter of like digging back into the stuff that really made me passionate about it in the first place. That was when I felt like I was starting to make some progress in that realm, So going back to Grant Green, like, I spent maybe, even after school, like I spent 2 years like where he was the only jazz guitarist that I listened to, and I was just like really trying to dig into his style, not really doing any like transcribing per se, but like I would, listen to him play a tune and then I would try to play over the same tune, and, just kind of like let what he was playing like influence my decisions harmonically and melodically and rhythmically,
Wow.
So, he does a lot of like this kind of like staccato sort of syncopated stuff, repeated phrases a lot.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Just like getting that sound in my ears was really important for developing my straight ahead playing. And then for me, like with the more, fusion or like experimental stuff, I kind of just like let everything come in a little bit more. So I allow a little bit more room for thinking, like while I'm playing, and like trying to target certain licks or certain harmonic devices and that kind of thing. One, because there's usually a lot more room for it, I think, when you're playing like over a vamp or something that has kind of limited harmonic movement, like you can think like, oh, let me try to use this lick on the major 7 chord and then move to this phrase or something like that. So I kind of let hearing still be like the foundation of that, but on top of that I'm like layering in more more thinking, more harmonic concepts, more theoretical stuff. So, if I was just playing over like F minor 7, ignoring all the other, changes and all the things you are, say it's just like a modal context, I might think, okay, that first thing that I played is a good starting point, but then maybe I'll go and play up a half step, and then go back into the key, and then maybe I'll try to play more intervallically, and then go back into the bebop stuff. So the bebop stuff is still like, I'm still hearing that as like the underpinning for all of this more complex vocabulary, but then, I'm just making all these harmonic decisions that kind of take me out of my comfort zone for a second, implying substitutions, implying, alternate harmonic movement, like, what happens if over this F minor 7 I play around with up a half step and down a half step. So and then go back to that bebop home base again, So I think just to kind of sum it up, like with straight ahead stuff, for me to get the results that I'm happy with, and for me to be playing in a way that feels natural, I have to be like hearing as much as possible, and that's a hard thing to maintain, because I have to be like, if I know I have straight ahead work coming up or straight ahead recordings or something, it's like I have to be listening to it a lot, or I'm just not going to be happy with the way that I'm playing and the way that it feels when I'm playing. And then for everything else, it's like I can free that thinking up a little bit more and just be a little bit more draw from different sources, I guess.
Interesting. Very interesting. Are there any technical things, like guitaristic technical things, that you open up more in the more fusion type playing, like bend, even something as simple as bending, right? In a straight ahead recording, it just, especially when there's no distortion, it just sounds like trash, and it's not stylistically relevant. But then there are moments when you can use that. Like, is that, and you mentioned Van Halen and like Hendrix, and obviously they do a lot of stuff that's, in that realm of either bending or tapping or something. Like, does that ever play a part?
Occasionally, yeah. I play with this artist. He used to go by Christian Scott, the trumpet player primarily, but now he goes by Chief Adjua. And we play more of a fusion leaning, like rock. Like, he kind of wants me to be like a rock guitarist in the group. So
he gave that direction.
Yeah, like we had a couple phone calls before I played my first gig with them, and he was giving me like certain like stylistic references that maybe he wanted me to keep in mind. Like, he would say like, I want you to be less, this was verbatim, he said, be less Gary Clark Jr. and more Johnny Greenwood. And I was like, all right, I'm your guy.
Oh, wow.
So that was cool, just to, like really get to experiment quite a bit more, because he was kind of looking for someone who had like the bebop background but was willing to stretch and move in these different directions, so there will be certain moments where I like will do little tapping stuff just because I'm hearing it and it's like in that zone that we're going for. But I'm not like one of those guys that can do any of the like Guthrie Govan stuff,
Yeah.
Unless I like really work it out. For me, it's just like kind of like really simple stuff like that. But yeah, definitely bending is a really big part of it, especially like when I turn on the distortion pedal. It's like I can't help but hear that sort of articulation. I like a lot of like half-step bends too. Or like even outside of the key, moving into the key. Or even like bending chromatics. That kind of reminds me of like Jan Hammer would do that kind of stuff with Mahavishnu, where it was like almost like broken up bebop, but with all these like pitch bend or the pitch wheel bend stuff in the middle.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my God. So I wanna talk about practice in general, and just two specific things. I would like to know, because you hear the stories about the greats practicing for like 14 hours a day, 12 hours a day. Like realistically, I'm assuming you did much more practice early on in your career, and like that's evolved to like practicing for specific things, like that tour you were talking about where you got specific instructions and you were like, okay, let me absorb this music, let me prepare for this. So the two questions are, number one, how much practice does it actually take to reach the level of mastery of someone like you, and then second part of the question is, how has your practice evolved over time?
Sure. So I think for me, I had a very different perspective of like what practice should be, especially early on, than I do now. For me, early on, I think just because of how many like anecdotes and stories I had heard from prominent players about, I was in the practice room for 12 hours a day, like drilling scales and stuff. And I did a lot of that, just like kind of almost like mindless technical work, I didn't feel like it really benefited me. Maybe just like the discipline that kind of played into like later parts of my development. But like when I was in high school, I remember begging my parents to let me do online homeschooling for my very last year of school, so that I could just like stay home and practice as much as possible.
Oh wow! And that was your request?
That
you already knew at that point.
I requested it, but I did not tell them that I wanted to just practice as much as possible. And
That's
I was like,
genius.
I want to prepare for my music school auditions, because senior year is coming up, and they're like, okay, let's do it. And I was just in the room like
Wow.
all day, like 12, 16 hours sometimes, just drilling. At that point, like I was trying to learn like some bebop stuff, so drilling like
Yep.
Pat Martino licks, like just chromatically on the
Yes.
fretboard and like in fourths and stuff like that. And some of that stuff I think like got connected to my ears, but like when I started at school, I remember being frustrated that one, I didn't have as much time to do that stuff. So I started practicing less naturally, but my practice kind of turned more towards like practicing things that I know I'm going to like really use when I'm in the moment and playing with people.
Hmm.
And that is just kind of like fine-tuned more and more, I think, over the years. Like it started off as being like, oh, I like this lick, so I'm going to practice it over this tune that, maybe they'll call at the jam session or something like that. And then it became like, oh, I have this record date coming up, like let me just, really sit with these tunes and like get deep inside of them and like make sure that I can have a bunch of stuff to fall back on, but I also feel comfortable like stretching outside of the boundaries that I've created for myself.
Hmm.
And now it's like it's even more just repertoire focused, and way more dialed back. I think like some days I just won't practice at all, because I want to give myself some time to kind of process what I did the day before. I think that that's
Hmm.
almost more important, like to give yourself that sort of time off to process than it is to like hit it consistently every day for 3 or 4 hours or something like that. Because I think everybody knows that feeling of like you're working on something and you're working on something and you're really expecting it to come out when you get on the gig, and then it doesn't. But then a year later, it just
Yeah.
like sneaks up on you. So yeah, now I'm just much more focused on like practicing repertoire. Like if I don't have anything coming up, recording or like gigging or touring wise, like I might just pick a standard to kind of use as a project almost, and I'll just try all this different stuff out on it. Like, maybe I'll create like a solo guitar arrangement. Maybe I'll just, play it with a backing track for a couple hours. Maybe I'll play it just with a metronome, experiment with different metronome settings. But the thing that I do the most probably is what I think of as like editing. So I'm like sitting with the tune unaccompanied, no backing track, no metronome or anything, and I'm just trying to like build good habits on it, basically.
Hmm.
So, I'll play something, I'll start playing a line, and if I play something that I don't feel like I'm really hearing, or something that, it's like, oh man, I play that every time I get to that section or
Hmm.
whatever,
Hmm.
I'll go back and I'll try to kind of work out a better option in my mind. It's something that's more in line with how I see myself sounding as a player and how I want to sound as a player. And it's not so much about like having a bunch of like cool licks to fall back on, but it's just like
Hmm.
giving yourself options and like I think some of those things just kind of come out when you're in the moment naturally, but just allowing myself to get more comfortable with the tuning basically, so that I can get on a gig and someone can call it in a tempo that I don't typically practice it in, or as a ballad or something like that, or in a different time signature, and I feel comfortable going in that direction. Because I felt for so long that because of the specificity of my practice, it was like if I got on a gig and someone shook up one element of that, I would just like fall apart completely. Like if I had been practicing It Could Happen to You in E flat and someone was like, let's play it in C, I'd just be like, oh man, I'm going to sit this one out. I don't have to take a chorus on this.
Yep.
But yeah, those little things, I think it's about like creating a balance of like being super specific and just also kind of being like pretty vague and just allowing
Yeah.
some things to, come up when they come up, basically.
Hmm. Amazing. So I'm curious about where opportunities have come from, and so I'll mention a few. to get this going. So I know you've done guitar competitions, most famously the Herbie Hancock one, but there have been other ones that you've won or been a finalist. So that's obviously one thing that helped with your career and, industry connections. And then social media would be another one. And it sounds like you've moved around a lot to different parts of the country. So I assume, different scenes, there are different opportunities there. Can you just talk about where some of the main opportunities have come from in your career?
Sure. I would say primarily from social media, which I didn't really see it being that way, like when I, first started posting stuff. But for example, like, I mentioned the gig with Chief, with Christian Scott. Like, he found out about me from a contact that he had at Berkeley. Walter Smith III, the tenor player, was is the chair of the woodwind department there. So when I was teaching there, he had heard my name floating around, and Christian was looking for a guitar player. So he, kind of threw my name in the pile of a couple different guys. And because I was so present on social media and had like, so many representations of my playing and like different styles, he hit me up and he was like, "Hey man, I'd love to do something with you." I think in a way it has kind of acted as like a digital business card, kind of, or even, the teaching gig that I had at Berkeley for a couple of years. I was there from 2021 to 2023, and I was teaching this guy remotely that is faculty in the guitar department. And we had been doing lessons together for a couple of months, and he said, "Man, I'd love to meet you in person sometime. Let me know if you ever come to Boston." And I told him, he said something about, I hope you get to do something with Berkeley at some point. And I said, "Oh yeah, I had just applied for a job there, but I heard back that I didn't get it." And he was like, "Let me pull some strings. I'll see what I can do." And then it just worked out. Like 2 days later, he had set up an email introduction with the chair of the department, and she reached out to me and she was like, "We'd love to have you." So, Is
that Cheryl, right? Cheryl Bailey?
So Cheryl's the assistant chair. Kim Perlap is the chair of the department.
Okay.
Yeah. But then we did like a Zoom call, the three of us, and me, Kim, and Cheryl, and, they were just talking about how they had seen my stuff on social media popping up all the time. So I think if you carry yourself professionally on there, I think it can really pay off well, and just present yourself in a way that's not that's accurate, to what you're going to be able to bring to the table. Because I have heard a lot of situations where even friends of mine have hit somebody up because they see something that they posted on social media, and then they hire them for something and they just can't really deliver the way that they're representing it on the videos.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's a very real thing. So for me, I just try to I'll just set up a camera while I'm practicing something and try to have it be natural. I don't edit out any of my mistakes or anything, or try to have anything be super perfect or pristine, because I also myself, I want to be able to look back on it and say oh, I remember when I was working on that. Let me revisit that thing, and also just to be able to kind of track my development and progress with certain concepts and stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess the most, the craziest example of what you were saying, the misrepresentation, is the whole Giacomo Turra, right? Did you follow that? And it sounds like, even because there were so many people, talking about it, and then I saw way after this news had broken, Rick Beato jumped in and did a video, and it was exactly what you said. It was a misrepresentation of, it was the dude, he couldn't play like he was representing himself online. So that's very interesting. Nice. So you mentioned teaching at Berkeley. So you went to Berkeley, you got to teach at Berkeley, you taught at UCLA, you taught at my college as well, BMCC, very briefly. You're no longer teaching in higher education. Was that a specific, you have too much work, or you wanted to focus on other things, or what instigated that change?
Yeah, it was a couple things, really. So my touring schedule started to pick up. That was kind of the main thing. And also, I just wanted a little bit more flexibility, like not just with the schedule, but in regards to like what kind of work I take. So like, yeah, that was the main decision. Like at this point, I just kind of teach through Zoom, Skype, and stuff like that. I think I would definitely be open to moving back into higher education at some point, but for me, I just kind of needed a little a little breather for a second. I think from like the rigor of higher education.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And another question dovetailing into that, I know you've done educational resources for pickup music, and you've done them for jazz lesson videos, and then also you have your own resources. And one of the contexts of this question is like where I teach, we're a community college at the City University of New York, and we're really trying to think about, what does it mean to study in college and what is different from getting the information online. And some of the things that we're focusing on are internships. So we've been developing partnerships with local businesses, and like we're actually getting people work afterwards, whether it's teaching work or work at a studio or performance opportunities at great venues. And that's obviously something different from the online education. And then also like you'll never replace the actual in-person ensemble playing or, the mentorship of one-on-one lessons. But I definitely see the benefit of, like a music theory or even a jazz guitar learning pathway as pickup music has. And honestly, some of it is organized better and it's cheaper and it's like more high quality and everything than you would get in higher education. So I guess my question is, how have you thought about that at all, about like, all these resources and what higher education means now and what it still potentially could offer?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely the thing that will sustain is like the in-person stuff that you can't really replicate online, like you were saying, like ensemble playing, even just being in the same room as a guitarist or your teacher that's on a higher level than you. Like that alone, I think, did so much for me as a player. Like just being, feet away from someone who's just like playing all this crazy stuff. That I think can do a lot, just in terms of like, giving you like different light bulb moments that that aren't necessarily replicated like when you're looking at something on a screen. But for me, because I thought about a lot, like, how different would what I did be if I hadn't gone to music school, like if I hadn't gone to Berkeley and William Patterson. And I thought a lot about how, if I went to school nowadays, I probably would just do a lot online, and because there's so many more resources now than they were when I went to college in 2012 to 2016, and then 2017 to 2019, and even since 2019, I think things have gotten like leaps and bounds further. Like with what you mentioned with like pickup, but even just like stuff on YouTube, like you can Google really specific questions, like what do I play over this chord? What did so and so play over this chord? And get definitive answers. But for me, the most important takeaway was like the connections that I made when I was at school. I have friends that I made like the very first week of school that I'm still playing with now. So for me, that's something that couldn't really be replicated. I think that there are some people that try to do a good job of like creating a community online, but still, just that face-to-face interaction, really getting to know who someone is, and then making music with them. I think that can't really be replicated online.
Very interesting. Yeah, the community thing. For me as well, if I think about that, people that I studied with, for sure, I've stayed connected with for years and years. Yeah. And then another thing that was fantastic for me, I did the Betty Carter Jazz Ahead residency, and I think you're allowed to do it 2 times. So I did it 2 times. One year it was the last year with Dr. Billy Taylor, and then they had a year off, and then I got to do it with Jason Moran leading it. And that's how I met Nate Smith. And that was a similar thing where like those connections, like Kenneth Salters on drums, I've literally been playing with him since I met him in 2010 or whatever. Like it's, the in-person thing definitely breeds that community more naturally.
Definitely.
I wonder if I should move on to the rapid fire. I probably should. Let's do that. We'll move on to the rapid fire, and then we can close it out. For the rapid fire questions, if you want to give a 1-word answer or 2-word answer, just like the first thing that comes to mind, and we'll go through a bunch of them. Some of them might be practical, and others will just be speaking.
Okay.
Here we go. All right. So first rapid fire question: your favorite improviser?
John Coltrane.
Favorite composer?
Maurice Ravel.
I'm going to do 2 together. Who's your favorite non-jazz guitarist? And then your favorite jazz guitarist?
Favorite non-jazz guitarist is Jimi Hendrix. And favorite jazz guitarist is George Benson.
So maybe I'll transition this into a practical question. So you mentioned George Benson, and I know you did a concert with Dan Wilson, playing his music. Can you demo? I know you have like very specific picking things, and you even have a picking masterclass, right? Is there some kind of George Benson picking technique that you can demo?
Sure. So I think probably the most important thing besides the grip, which is this kind of reverse grip, like the pick is going to attack the strings this way rather than this way, is going to be the rest stroke. So if I pick on the low E string, the pick is going to rest on the A string. But if I do an upstroke, the pick is going to escape the string. So it's kind of like this turning a doorknob motion is how I think about it, at least when it's coming from the wrist. So if I apply that to like a pentatonic scale, I think that's probably the easiest way to see it in action. So like you'll see that the pick is just moving like in one plane, like it's not really flipping around and doing all this different stuff. It almost kind of just like looks like the same motion as if I was playing on one string. And that's because the rest stroke and the escape motion allow you to change strings really easily, right? So if I were to do even string skipping stuff, it still is in one plane, and it kind of just looks like the same motion I would use as if I was playing on one string. So you really want the left hand to communicate well with the right hand. So if I throw anything in the mix that's odd, right? So like something like that, that's going to be like a big no-no with the George Benson technique. Like if I do that and then I go into maybe a second position minor pentatonic, you'll see that the pick flipped into more of this upward slant like that. So what I want to do is add legato in the middle so that I can keep the pick in that plane, right? So I could do it in this position too. And I usually put it in the middle like that because it hides the sound of the legato. Like if I were to do it, you kind of hear that that pull off before the string change a little bit too clearly. And that's just if you want kind of the machine gun picking style. I think it's good to hide the legato in the middle rather than at the end of string changes. But I apply that to like be-bop stuff too. It's just a little bit more, there's more decorations in the line, so you kind of have to be a little bit more deliberate about it. But I practiced that stuff so much, and I would work out little licks and things like that had specific picking directions that I kind of just go by feel now. If I pick something, I kind of know if I'm going to be able to speed it up and still have it feel comfortable, and vice versa.
Very cool. I'm going to continue with the practical rapid fire. Well, that was fantastic.
Awesome.
Very quickly, it reminds me of like classical guitar almost, with the rest strokes versus the free strokes. It's very interesting. Okay, so on an altered dominant chord, what's your favorite thing to play?
Tritone up dominant. So on A altered, E flat 7, and I'll leave in all the regular E flat 7 stuff, like the fourth, which would be the major seventh there. Kind of highlights some of the altered stuff, but some extra stuff in there too.
And what is a recent obsession? Like, what's something you're practicing right now?
Messian modes.
Oh, wow.
Like
Okay.
this one. 9-note scale. You can mix up in all sorts of different ways. And you have like a bunch of different scales that are contained within it too. And all these different patterns that you can do, stuff like that.
Wow. Very cool. Can you demo an aha moment that you had on guitar? It could be anything to do with chord voicings or anything at all. What was like oh my God, I've never seen the guitar like this before?
I would say when I learned like all the different functions of a dominant chord.
Okay.
And this was really related to like be-bop vocabulary, but like if I take C7, being able to see that as not just C7, but also E minor 7 flat 5, G minor 7, and also B flat major 7 sharp 11. That was just a game changer for me, because then it's like you can use all the same vocabulary over those different chords.
Yeah. Yep. Let's do Desert Island picks. You could do three to five. What albums are you bringing with you?
Yeah. Jimi Hendrix Band of Gypsies. Ram by Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney. Are You Experienced by Jimi Hendrix Experience.
Similar question, given our earlier conversation. Other than jazz, what are your top three to five genres that have influenced you?
Metal, rock, if that counts as a different thing, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
And funk, probably.
Sweet. Let's say you're at a jam session. What tune are you calling?
Probably some Joe Henderson tune, like Serenity by Joe Henderson.
Is there a piece of advice from a mentor that really stuck with you?
So when I was at William Patterson doing my master's, we had these juries at the end of each semester. And it was basically you play with a faculty rhythm section, and you give them a list of tunes, and they choose randomly from the list of tunes. So I did this, played with the faculty members, and then Bill Charlap, who's the director of the program, told me that I should dig more into the guitar. He said that I sounded good, the time feel was fine, and the vocabulary was there, but he asked me who I was listening to, and I named, Mark Turner and Joshua Redman and Joe Lovano, and he was like, that's cool and everything, but what about Grant Green and Peter Bernstein and Wes Montgomery? So for me, that kind of led me back down that rabbit hole of like checking out the guys that first got me interested in the instrument, or in the genre in the instrument in the first place,
Interesting. Nice. And then final rapid fire. What's something that you would say to your younger self, or to a younger, generation who's on this pathway of being a musician? Any advice you can give?
I would say just keep learning the music you love, and allow that to kind of dictate whatever direction you go in.
I love it. Awesome. And just before we close out, anything coming up that the listeners should be aware of? Anything you want to pitch, like a new album, tour, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. So I'm releasing a record with my wife pretty soon. We have a project together where it's the two of us, and then a drummer and a bass player that we play with. So it's mostly standards, but a couple originals on there. And then also in the new year, I'm going to be working on a new organ trio record, which I'm pretty excited about. And that'll likely be with Will Gorman, the organist that I was talking about earlier. And I'm undecided on what drummer to go with, but I'll probably also have a couple special guests here and there too.
Very cool. Awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask you about some of those projects, especially the one with your wife. I could literally talk to you for hours, but that's brought us to a close. So thank you for listening. That has been good company. I'm Quentin Angus. We sat down with Cecil Alexander, and I will see you next time.